something bright here, like me.
Hey everybody, Deathblade here with another Yin Yang China, where I'm talking about the ups and downs of living in China as an expat. And if you saw the title of the video, you probably figured out what I'm going to be talking about, but maybe you're wondering what exactly I mean. First of all, it's not like literally nothing in China goes according to schedule, but let me just put it this way. It is really, really common for things to be sprung on you at the last minute, changed at the last minute, and it's something that as a foreigner, especially working for a Chinese company, you basically just have to get used to. Now, I'm not really sure why China is like this. I don't know culturally, historically, any of the reasoning behind it. I'm not even going to try to speculate about it. I'm just going to tell you how things work in China, at least in my experience. Basically, although there are certain things which get planned ahead of time, for example, the government will put out a list of the main holidays throughout the year, for government holidays at least. And, you know, obviously if there is a big event, you know, a movie coming out, a special thing happening at the mall, obviously they'll have advertisements and whatnot. But when it comes to day-to-day affairs, things get sprung on you all the time. When I first got to China, it really frustrated me, and basically I just had to get used to it. I'll give you a couple examples. Again, this isn't anything mind-blowing. It's one of those little things that is just slightly annoying, but when you combine it with all the other slightly annoying things that you have to deal with that are kind of different from Western society and culture, they can kind of stack up to be very frustrating. When I first started working at this school that I worked at in China for a long time, I ended up working for them for something like 5 or 6 years. When I first started there, I want to say just a couple weeks or months into it, we got notified, I'm pretty sure on Friday afternoon or something, that all of the classes on Saturday were being canceled. Now, incidentally, the way this school worked, it's kind of an after school sort of thing. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we only had a little bit of actual teaching time in the evenings. And then Saturday and Sunday were all day teaching. And so for classes to be canceled on Saturday was kind of a big deal. It basically meant that an entire super packed work day, there was nothing to do. So when we foreigners got this news literally the day before, on the one hand, we were kind of like, whoa, okay, cool. We don't have to, you know, show up to teach. But on the other hand, it was kind of frustrating because all of a sudden we had this completely open day and we didn't know about it until right beforehand. We could have planned to travel, you know. Our city was, the city I lived in, by train only an hour and a half from Beijing. So, you know, it's totally doable to go for a day trip to Beijing. There's tourist things to do, and, you know, having a sudden day off was cool but frustrating. But it gets worse. So we got this sudden notice that we had time off, and, you know, we're kind of happy about it but a little frustrated, and immediately the teachers started like making plans, like, oh, I'm gonna go out of town, I'm gonna go to the movies, whatever. Then afterward, a few hours later, all of a sudden we got notice that the school was planning a trip for us, and we were gonna go strawberry picking, and then we were gonna go to this temple outside of the city. And already people had started to make plans, only to find out that, guess what? We're actually required by the company to go on this company trip. Now, there were a couple frustrating things about that. For one thing, you know, nobody really is keen on hanging out with the boss of the company, at least in this situation. And so therefore, if we did have time off, none of the teachers wanted to spend it with the school personnel. You know, we wanted to go do our own things. And that's not to mention that every single one of the foreign teachers had already been to the temple that they were going to take us to visit. If that wasn't bad enough, let me let you in on a little secret that's, well, it's like an open secret. It's a commonly known fact, I guess I should say, among people who have traveled in China and people who have lived there. And that is that basically all Chinese temples are the same. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but seriously, when you go to visit one Chinese temple, you're like, whoa, this is so cool. Then you visit the second Chinese temple and you're like, wow, this is pretty neat. Third Chinese temple, you're like, okay, I get it. And then after the fourth one, you're basically like, I'm done with Chinese temples. Now, of course, they're not all exactly the same, but for all intents and purposes, they have the same kind of general layout and the same idea. It's sort of like, you know, if you're in, let's say, America and you go to Vons, and then you go to a Vons across town, or maybe in a different city or state, you kind of will be like surprised, whoa, this place is different. Then you go to a third Vons and you realize, okay, well, basically maybe the layout's a little different, but it has all the same stuff in it. Sort of the similar thing with Chinese temples. And so not only had every foreign teacher present been to many Chinese temples via travel already, we were being asked to go back to a temple that we had already all visited, and we definitely were not very happy about it. Anyway, so that was kind of a long story. The whole point is just that these things were getting sprung on us at the last minute. at that school, you know, this is something I dealt with for years. Classes would be canceled at the last minute. The schedule would be changed at the last minute. Remember how I said that Saturday and Sunday you had to teach all day? Well, a lot of times because of the student's schedule, they would flip the Friday schedule with the Sunday schedule, and it would all be at the last minute with no notice. And it wasn't just that school, trust me. I've talked to a lot of other expats in China, and regardless of the company or the school or whatever, everybody kind of deals with that sort of thing. And again, it's not just work. Another example, the apartment complex that me and Madame Deathblade lived in for a while, it was not uncommon for me to, you know, maybe go out to dinner, come back, and then all of a sudden there's a note on the wall or on the door or whatever that says the power will be out all day tomorrow. Now for me, as a translator or maybe doing YouTube videos or whatever, that's kind of a big deal because I work from home. So if there's no power and I can't turn on my computer, well, that definitely changes my entire day, and I would really have liked to know about that not just the night before it happened. Sometimes it would be even the morning of. There was a chat group for all of the residents in our complex. You know, the management would send out a message, oh, the water is going to be out all day today. And, you know, we would rush around to try to fill up, you know, buckets of water to have on hand for cleaning or cooking or something. So those are just a couple random examples. And this, again, is not anything sort of like earth-shattering, but it is something that if you're planning to go to China to live, you should probably know. Even if you're going to China to travel, I think it's something to think about because the itineraries for travel trips can change at the drop of a hat because, you know, all of a sudden it turns out the tourist destination that you were going to go to is closed that day and nobody knew about it. And again, if you're working as a teacher, your class schedule will be changed without your knowledge. Vacation times will be added or taken away and you don't know about it. And it's all very frustrating. To top it off, what makes it even worse, specifically at that school that I worked with, but that school is by no means unique in this. The school would pay us based on the hours that we worked. Even though all the teachers had a monthly salary, you know, it would be like 5,000, 10,000 renminbi per month. But then they would calculate how many hours we would work and prorate it. And therefore, if you had a day off that was beyond the normal days off, they will take away your salary. They will deduct funds from your salary, and that would be beyond our control, and there was nothing that we could do about it. Maybe that's a subject for another video, but I hope this kind of gives you guys an idea of what life is like in China. Now, since this is Yin Yang China, I try to talk about the ups and the downs. So that I kind of talked all about the downsides. What's the upside? Well, again, if you've watched this series of video, I think you might have picked up on the fact that the upside tends to be that you just get used to that different way of life. I do think it helps people to be more flexible, certainly for me. Early on, I got really angry and frustrated at these schedule changes and unexpected things happening. But as I dealt with it over and over again, I kind of got used to it, and it really helped me to be a lot less frustrated when things changed and didn't happen according to the schedule, or when things happened that I wasn't expecting. Last thing I want to point out, if you've stuck around this long, this series is about life in China, and full disclosure, I don't live in China anymore. I did live in China for 8 years. For any of you who haven't followed a lot of my videos, I lived in China for 8 years and I just recently moved back. I'm currently approaching the 1 year mark of being away from China. So I think everything in China is still fresh in my mind. Having moved back to the United States from China, it's given me even an additional kind of perspective about it all. And I have a lot of ideas for future videos in this series. I hope to keep it going. If you'd like to support the content, please do like and share. And if you have any ideas about questions that you would like answered or perspectives about China, please leave them in the comments. And if you're an expat, or if you're Chinese, or if you've traveled in China and you have experienced some of these random schedule changes, you know, let me know your story in the comments, or if you have a different perspective, I'd also like to hear that as well. So that's it for this video. I'll see you next time. Go.